Hello and welcome to Silver Age, Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. Or in the case of every 6 or so episodes, we just shit on weird comic books. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarmes.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and, a few months ago, we had a really fun episode where we just discussed the lamest comic book characters. And there were some pretty fucking lame ones. Like, The Wall, and what was the X-Men you had? Who had, the power of having, long skin or something?
His name was Skin. Yeah, he's got 6 extra feet of skin on his body.
Ugh, yeah, world's greatest hero. Earth's mightiest.
Mm-hmm. Only the finest for Marvel. Only the finest for the X-Men.
And those characters were weird, but they weren't the weirdest. And honestly, this episode's characters probably aren't the weirdest. If you spend a few hours just diving deep into the catacombs that is weird comic book characters, you're gonna get trapped forever. There are some insane comic book characters, just the most bizarre things ever that they've created over the years. And today we're talking about 10 of them.
Yeah. So when you're an industry and a medium that has existed for, over a century now? Almost a century, if not that.
Let's see. Comic books in general, longer than this, but superhero comics, which I guess is what we talk about, would be 1935. So 85 years of comic books. Or was it 36 or 34? Around then, I don't know. My nerd cred is failing.
It really has. You should get it checked out.
Every 3,000 miles, yeah.
Point is, when you're a medium that has existed for so long and have done so many different things and have such expansive universes, there's bound to be some ideas that work and become some of the most beloved parts of characters, universes, stories ever made. But arguably, for every one that works, there's about a dozen or so that do not. That's just typically how it goes with any entertainment, Something works, something doesn't. Some things are just weird.
Sometimes you get the Green Lantern who's a planet, or the Daredevil villain who has the power of stilts.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Sometimes you get Harley Quinn, who's a great character, one of the most beloved characters ever made in comics.
Well, I don't know.
And then in the exact same TV show, you get Condiment King.
The Harley Quinn TV show is great.
You told me recently that you binge-watched that entire thing, didn't you?
Yeah, in 2 days. It's such a good show.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out. I should probably do that soon.
Oh god, it's really good. I love their version of Clayface, as opposed to just being the dumbass thug he normally is. They say, hey, wait a minute, Clayface is an actor. What if he was a thespian actor who talks like this and is really into performance? Anyway, we're off topic. Harley Quinn's good. You should watch it. Honestly, it features some weird characters who would be good for this show, like Dr. Psycho and Queen of Fables. But we're not talking about either of those. We're talking about even weirder characters.
Yeah, so the prompt for this week was Casey and I would each make our top 5 lists of some of the weirdest characters in comic book history. The last time we did this, it wasn't the weirdest, it was the lamest comic characters that we can think of. And honestly, we could probably even have a part 2 about that.
Yeah, we could feature the original Adam. Hey, Adam, the dude who has the power of shrinking? Did you know that originally he didn't? His power was just he was short. He was just a short dude.
Of course it was.
You could be the Adam.
I really could, honestly. Is there a position open? Honestly, that's a dream come true for me. Point is, for me personally, I don't know about you, Casey, but me personally, when it came to last episode, which was the lamest, the criteria was basically just characters that are unintentionally, for me personally, was unintentionally bad, lame, stupid characters. And if they were characters that were meant to be weird, then I would shy away from excluding them on my list. That is not the case for this episode. If they're fucking weird, they're fucking weird, okay? And I, as I'm sure you have for this list, just searched through the bowels of the internet, of comic book history, looking for the weirdest, and honestly, what the fuck are some of these characters? Some of these characters are just bad ideas out the gate.
Yeah, honestly, a few of mine are, okay, they deliberately made a character weird for a joke.
Mm-hmm.
That works. But some of these, they were genuine when they made them, and that's somehow worse. Oh, God.
Oh, I'm sorry, right now it clicked in my head. You and I have run our list past each other before the episode, and one of the characters that we talked about that I said I vaguely remember, and you said that I know you talked about, I just remembered who that is. Sorry, we can cut this part out, but there's one character.
Oh, yeah.
Marcus Immortus, I remembered who he is.
Yay.
Yikes.
My favorite Captain Marvel character. Can't wait to see him in Captain Marvel 2.
Yeah, I know, right? And again, like you said earlier, we could totally continue this. We could make a part 2, 3. Honestly, we can do these episodes for a long time, just coming up with the weirdest characters, because there's some fucking weird shit in comic books. Just to run past some of my honorable mentions, there's an X-Men character named Beak, who is a guy with feathers, a beak, and claws for hands. He can't fly. He's kind of half human, half bird. It's weird, okay? Other characters I have include Danny the Street. He's a Doom Patrol ally who is a giant sentient street. What? He's a street.
And then he gets injured and becomes a brick.
Yep. Exactly. Like, he's weird. It's a sentient street that's weird, but that's also a Doom Patrol comic, so you kind of expect it. Another character in my honorable mentions is Clownface, who started off as a man in Arkham Asylum, an old man who was like comatose, brain dead, incapacitated, in a wheelchair, couldn't move, couldn't talk. He was being cared for at Arkham Asylum. No one knew his name. But then one day, one of the nurses discovers that the reason why he can't think or speak is because he is a piece of Clayface.
Oh, that's actually clever.
Yeah, like, because what Clayface can do is he can, like, split his body into pieces and become, like, different people, you know? Which the show Harley Quinn plays off the gimmick of.
Yeah, and Batman the Animated Series had that episode where, like, a chunk of Clayface was, like, a little girl who, like, Robin had a crush on.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very, very similar circumstance for Clownface. But it's revealed that the nurse that discovered that, yeah, that was the Joker in disguise. So,
what?
Joker took a piece of his DNA, put it into the piece of Clayface, and turned it into a Jokerized version of Clayface. Think John Carpenter's The Thing meets Clayface. And it's got the psyche of a Joker. It's fucking terrifying to look at and to think about. Like, it's weird, but it's not, arguably, I would argue that it's not the weirdest thing that's happened, and because it's actually really effective. It's weird in being terrifying, you know?
I guess, just going through some honorable mentions, like, I don't have full lengthy entries written out for any of these, because they didn't make the top 5. There's Dynamite Thor, the Golden Age superhero, who has the power of just chucking dynamite at people.
Of course.
There's Gay Ghost, who was like a Golden Age superhero, who has a name that has a different meaning now.
Yeah.
And that's all anyone ever remembers him for. There's Muhammad Ali, who fought Superman once.
Of course.
There's Humpty Dumpty, the Batman villain, who's like, he looks like Humpty Dumpty, and he likes taking things apart and putting them back together, like his grandmother was evil to him, so he cut her apart, then tried to sew her back together. He's actually a sad character, who I kind of like. And finally, Marshall Mathers, better known by the secret alias Eminem. Yeah, there was a Punisher comic where he tried to murder Eminem.
Yeah.
Because Eminem's rapper friend was a drug dealer or something. I don't really remember the specifics. So, like, the Punisher, like, murdered Eminem's bodyguard and tried to blow him up, then they teamed up. It was a dumb comic. But yeah, Marshall Mathers exists in the Marvel Universe.
Yes, he does.
Wait, hold on. I just realized Eminem references superheroes a lot in his songs.
Yeah.
Eminem's like Deadpool.
Yeah, Eminem actually, before he wanted to be a rapper, actually wanted to be a Marvel Comics writer, illustrator.
Neat. Good for him. So, Riley, ready to get into the real meaty weirdos?
Not yet. I actually have 3 more honorable mentions. One being Glob Herman, who was a teenager at Professor X's school for gifted youngsters. His skin was translucent because his body was made up of this particular type of lamp oil.
Ew.
He died because he caught fire, and it burned up his entire body.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
He burnt up because his body is flammable. Armless Tiger Man, who was a simple guy, a genius mechanic in Nazi Germany, who, in an accident, lost both of his arms. Now, what would you do if you were a genius mechanic at the time? Would you make yourself a pair of robotic arms like Jax from Mortal Kombat and find and track down the people that were responsible?
I mean, no, because I don't exist in a comic book character, but if I was a comic book character, definitely.
Yeah, you'd think that's what he would have done. No. He became a master kickboxer, filed his teeth down to points like a tiger.
What?
Allied himself with Red Skull, and started fighting alongside the Nazis in World War II against the forces of Captain America.
Okay, that's super weird and stupid.
He has no arms.
Wait, isn't there another Marvel dude who doesn't have any arms? Like, he was a master swordsman, and he cut off his arms and replaced them with swords, and he needs to have a butler because he has swords for arms. He can't feed himself.
Probably. That does sound familiar.
Oh god, there are some weird comic characters.
Hemogoblin is the last of my honorable mentions. Hemogoblin is a vampire who was an enemy of DC's The New Guardians. He was a vampire created by a white supremacist group for the purpose of killing non-white people, homosexuals, transgendered people, basically everyone white supremacists hate.
Oh good, Nazi vampires, why not?
Yeah, and you know what? That's already a pretty fucked up idea. But the thing is, Hemogoblin is very much so a product of when it came out, which I believe was in the 70s or 80s. My guess would be the 80s. Because while he was attacking people and drinking their blood, he contracted HIV. And in a battle with the New Guardians, he gave 3 members of the New Guardians HIV, the disease that causes AIDS. That was a plot point in a DC comic book 30 years ago.
And I'm sure it was handled with the most respect possible.
Of course. Absolutely. It was the 80s. Come on. The era of respect.
Oh god, you just reminded me. I should have had this character on my list, and now he's going to be an honorable mention because I don't have time to do the proper research because I'm remembering him right this second.
Yeah.
There was a Batman story where the villain was the ghost of Elvis, and Batman fought the evils of rock and roll. Guess when this story came out?
When?
90s.
Of course it did.
You know, the 90s, when there was the moral panic against rock and roll. That's a weird story.
Really striking while the iron's hot, DC.
But yeah, Riley, who's your first, official one?
Okay. These are in a vague order. I'm going to say them in descending order of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 being, I think, one of the weirdest characters. It's kind of vague. My opinions of it might change, but point is, this is the general order. My number 5 is a fairly recent Image Comics creation. He was created, I believe, in 2017, over the last few years. He was a part of a 5-issue limited series, and the superhero's name is The Beef.
Like the Wendy's advertisements?
Just wait. Yeah. Yes. Alright,
no.
We open up in the middle of buttfuck nowhere in middle America.
Hey, I'm from there.
Yeah, nice. So am I. Well, kinda.
You're from Milwaukee. I'm from a town of 2,000 people.
Yeah, alright, fair enough. Open up in that town. A man named Chuck Carter works in the town's beef processing plant. He is a slaughterer. He is responsible for killing the cows that are going to be sent to have their meat processed. Now, what's notable about Chuck Carter is that he's been working at this job for years. And yet, none of these kills, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of cows he personally has killed over the last several years, none of them have had any effect on his psyche whatsoever. Which is pretty alarming. And we can tell that it has no effect on his psyche because the fact that he works at this meat processing plant, he gets a lifetime supply of free beef, courtesy of his company.
Yum.
He eats that beef products almost exclusively every single day.
Oh, that's terrible for your health, man.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, so he kills the cows and then eats them that very day. No questions asked, without blinking an eye. However, one day, he saw the love of his life, this beautiful woman, being chased by one of the cows at the farm. And she was going to get hurt by it, but before it was able to hurt her, one of Chuck's childhood bullies killed the cow to save her. Now, that cow died, quote-unquote, needlessly. And because of that, the death of that cow psychologically broke Chuck Carter. He lost his sanity, lost his temper, and due to the years of consuming toxic chemicals from beef products, he turned into a giant hulking monster made out of pure raw beef, known as the Beef.
What?
What makes him weird is that he is the Hulk, but instead of gamma radiation, it's beef. It's raw beef. It was a 5-issue mini limited series. The purpose of it was to be like, it was basically supposed to be a commentary on the meat production industry.
Yeah, and you know what? That's fair. There's a lot of issues in the meat production industry. For instance, it keeps turning its employees into hulks.
Yeah, exactly.
What? Appreciate what you're doing. Think you may have missed the mark, dude.
Of all the things you could have done after seeing a cow get murdered, I don't know, maybe go vegetarian, vegan if you're so inclined. But nope, he transforms, whenever he gets mad, transforms into a giant monster made out of raw beef. That's my number 5, the Beef.
Is he, like, evil?
From what I could tell, it's kind of like he's like a misunderstood guy that the town is afraid of but learns to love at the end of the day because of reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, and then in every episode he walks away while the sad music plays.
Right, exactly. It's the hard not life for us. Anyway, yeah, but the point is...
That's what I was thinking.
It's what I was thinking. I don't know what that says about me psychologically, but that's what I was thinking. But point is, it's an Image Comics character where their whole thing is, if it's weird and good, fucking do it, you know? Image Comics has had some weird stuff. This is not going to be the last Image Comics character on my list. Just throwing that out there.
Wait, hold on, but other people have been eating meat from that slaughterhouse, right?
I would assume, yeah.
So, is everyone in that town going to turn into beef hulks?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a story about a Hulk made out of beef. I don't know if the writers put a whole lot of emphasis on the logistics of this.
All I'm imagining is, Muscular from My Hero Academia. Let me look up what this guy looks like. Oh, that's somehow even worse than what I was imagining.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. I'm looking at Muscular right now, and I'm like, yeah, no, beef is worse.
Yeah.
Not to flex on you or anything, but yeah.
It's fine. So, My Hero, I'm going old school, golden age, now in public domain weirdness.
Nice.
You know, Riley, a lot of people think of Wonder Woman as the first female superhero.
Mm-hmm.
She was not. This character, who a lot of people refer to as the first female superhero, came out in 1940, 1 year before Wonder Woman, who was 1941. More than a year, because I'm pretty sure Phantoma was February and Wonder Woman was October of their respective years. Point is, female superhero before Wonder Woman. I'm sure she's every bit as great of a character. Phantoma, which, by the way, her name does not have a consistent spelling, which says a lot about how much thought went into this character. Phantoma was created in 1940 by Fletcher Hanks, and her comic is subtitled The Mystery Woman of the Jungle. She's this pretty white woman with blonde hair who lives in the jungle and defends it from all the normal jungle threats. Ivory hunters, mad scientists, Nazis, mummies, alien dinosaurs, the regular.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It is eventually retconned in that comic that Phantoma is an ancient Egyptian princess revived to defend the jungle. Side note, you've noticed I've just been saying the jungle? They don't say which. From the scans I saw there were jaguars, which means Amazon. So what this Egyptian princess is doing there, I don't know. And again, like I said, white, blonde hair, because 1940s were the kings of having people of color in their comics.
Of course.
And I'm sure that's not going to be a theme in these next couple characters I bring up. The idea of, like, pretty sexy jungle lady, it's not original. Other people did it. Now, what's interesting about Phantoma is how she changes when she uses her powers. She, like, bulks up, her skin turns blue, and her face turns into a skull. She keeps the long curly blonde hair, though, which makes her look like Skeletor wearing a wig. She looks absolutely ridiculous. I'm forwarding the photo to you now.
That is a weird creation for the 40s. A giant sexy blonde lady that turns into a giant blue skeleton.
That still has the blonde hair.
That is pretty extreme for the 40s, you know? At the same time, Batman had pink gloves, you know? Like.
So, you may be wondering, what are Phantoma's powers? And the answer is, I don't fucking know. Writers had to do whatever they want for the story. And you know, the fun thing about Phantoma is her stories are really weird and violent. Like, they always end with her doing these insane reality warping punishments using her Amazon Pharaoh magic to just fuck people over. There's an issue where she turns a man into a dandelion. There's an issue where she teleports a man to an asteroid populated by dinosaurs. There's an issue where she fights Nazis with an army of flying lions. Once she fused like a whole bunch of diamond hunters into a single dude and then kicked him into a snake pit.
Okay.
And you know, because Phantoma is public domain, she's actually been used a few times in modern day by other artists. Hack and Slash, which is a Image series, talking about Image being weird, they have her as a recurring character. I saw some covers for a Phantoma reboot by Chapter House Comics. I haven't read it, but they made Phantoma's design work, judging from the images. So hey, Phantoma's got a poem. Unfortunately, you know, this character who the only reason people care about her is because she was the first female superhero, I got some bad news for her. She wasn't. Depending on you count it, the first female superhero was either Magician from Mars or Woman in Red. So, I guess that's Phantoma. She lost her one claim to fame by people actually looking at dates.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Blue Jungle Lady.
Yeah, it's just so many individual elements to it. Like, she's a reincarnated Egyptian princess who's defending the wilderness.
Wrong continent, but whatever.
I don't know, it's just like I said, they add up to make like a whole package of what the fuck. Like, she turned a guy into a dandelion. What did that man do? Exactly.
I don't remember.
Like, why would this man deserve it? I'm sure he was trying to kill an animal or something like that. I'm sure he was like cutting down trees or whatever. But, like, why do you need to turn him into a dandelion? What does that serve? Did she turn him back, or did she just blow on him?
I don't know. I couldn't find a lot of scans of this, because old character, been out of print for decades, but I'm just listing off what other people said she did.
Alright. I mean, can you imagine that, though? She turns someone into a dandelion, and then picks him, so she's essentially cutting him in half, and then blows on all the seeds.
What I find weird is she fused 5 or whatever men together into a single man. Okay, that's already a punishment, and then she kicks him in the snake pit.
I feel like there was a step there. Like, you could have gone with one or the other, but no, Phantoma went the extra mile and went with both. That's extreme.
Who's next on your list?
My number 4 is actually a character that you might find surprising. My number 4 is Marvel character The Man-Thing. For those of you who don't know, Man-Thing is the guardian of the Nexus, which is like the gateway to all other dimensions. It's located in the Everglades. He's attracted to emotion. He releases like a pheromone from his body that whenever people fear him, he'll touch them and the chemical will combine with the fear and that person will spontaneously combust. He can't talk, which means he has no character. He actually came out a couple months before the iconic DC character Swamp Thing. But Swamp Thing is arguably a much better character because, you know, the whole thing that Swamp Thing can talk and has a personality. Point is, he's just a giant collection of leaves, muck, and just shit in a swamp, you know? He's sentient. So that is pretty cerebral already. Pretty weird. Many people may not have even heard of him because for all intents and purposes, he's a D-list character at best. He was created in Tales to Astonish way back in the day. I would argue he works better there because he is more of a one-off villain. He's a giant plant monster, which is a concept almost as old as comic books themselves, you know? It works really well in this idea of Tales to Astonish, but like I said, he's not a real interesting character. Now, the reason why he's on this list is because a couple years ago, Marvel tried reinventing the character of Man-Thing by giving him a whole new personality, a story, and just rebooting him entirely. Now, let me back up for a second. Over the last 10-15 years, what Marvel and DC have been doing is they've started commissioning previously established writers to work on certain characters of theirs. They've hired Kevin Smith, Brad Meltzer, everyone's favorite Joss Whedon, and more recently, J.J. Abrams and his son. They require novelists and screenwriters to write stories for their characters. And the results are pretty hit or miss, which is par for the course with comic books, with writing in general. Kevin Smith, for example, he had a fantastic run on Daredevil and a great run on Green Arrow. However, his Batman run had a lot to be desired. Joss Whedon apparently had a fantastic, critically acclaimed run on X-Men because you can be a piece of shit and good at your job, but he had a pretty lackluster run on The Runaways. What many people agree is one of, if not the worst attempt at doing just that, is what they did with Man-Thing. Marvel commissioned R.L. Stine, the author of the Goosebumps novels.
Oh, that's perfect, though.
The author of the Goosebumps novels to write a 5-issue series about Man-Thing reinvigorating the character.
Did it end with, like, a random stupid plot twist?
Yes, it did, and I'll get into that.
Of course it did.
But, more specifically, the comic opens up with Man-Thing in a swamp being attacked by a giant centipede monster. And the centipede monster is tormenting him. And in one breath, the centipede monster says, "Whoa, I didn't know they could pile human waste that high. Where does the swamp end and you begin? You think you're attractive just because you attract flies? Here's a newsflash. They have this new thing called deodorant. Get back to the swamp. There's a gator waiting for his breakfast." That's how this comic begins. Now, does that sound funny to you? Were you laughing at any of those lines, Casey?
No, I was not, no.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, I mean, he's right. I never thought about this, but Man-Thing must stink.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It turns out that Man-Thing is not actually fighting this monster. He's on a...
Keep going.
He's on a movie soundstage filming a Man-Thing movie. He's not being attacked by a monster. The monster is a giant puppet. Man-Thing is acting in his own movie. The plot of the story is Man-Thing somehow learned to talk, despite the fact that he has no mouth and no vocal cords. He realized that all these superheroes were getting movies, and he wanted to get his own movie.
Yeah, but can you imagine that? A Man-Thing movie? What type of idiot would make that?
Apparently the Sci-Fi Channel 12 years before this comic came out.
I know.
Which completely negates the satire of this comic, because this is the exact same plot as Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
That shit, you're right.
Now, when someone says Teen Titans Go, you know, the Cartoon Network kids show did it better, you know that's bad. But point is, I'll speed up here, take a lot of time, but basically, there's not a Man-Thing movie. Now he's trying to get a Man-Thing movie made, and he's doing it himself, and he's playing himself. Yeah, but there was a Man-Thing movie, so that completely negates the satire, making it null and void.
I don't think this comic can really describe with big words like satire.
No. Basically, the movie, though they only just started filming, is already testing poorly with audiences. So the studio cancels it. Man-Thing, he's walking down the Hollywood Boulevard when he's attacked by a giant mirror version of himself. Do we get an explanation at any point in this entire 5-issue series about what the hell this thing is? No, we do not. But he fights it, and all the while, he is making painfully bad, unfunny one-liners the entire fucking time. Like those lines that I said that the centipede was using, that's the level of humor. None of the jokes land. But somehow R.L. Stine thought it was funny, believe the flies line. You think you're attractive just because you attract flies? Yeah, that comes out twice in this series.
Oh my god, no.
Point is, having lost his movie role, he goes back to the swamp where he's attacked by a giant crocodile, or a giant alligator, giant snakes. He ties the snakes' necks together, calls it, hey, let's call this a tie, you know? Fuck. He meets a woman that's lost in the swamp. He brings her along this entire journey, him traveling through the Nexus, trying to find, I think it's the Allfather, who is essentially not Odin, another guardian of the Nexus in a different dimension. So he's just dimension hopping, trying to find this guy, save him. He fights giant monsters. He fights a giant eldritch god, and the god makes a joke about Bitcoin.
Ugh.
That girl that he met in the middle of the swamp, she's kind of become a love interest.
Ew.
Then halfway through the series, she turns into a giant monster, and then he fights and kills her, and then never brings her up again, despite the fact that she became a love interest for him. This ends, he finds the Allfather, saves him, whatever, goes back to Earth, but instead ends up on a different Earth, where every single person is a man-thing. So, I have several questions for R.L. Stine. Why would a genius scientist who, in an accident, was turned into a giant swamp monster, why would he want to become a movie star, a one-liner spouting action movie star? Why would he want to do that instead of, I don't know, try to become human again? There's just so many bad ideas that R.L. Stine, the author of the Goosebumps novels, he was asked in many interviews about this. Keep in mind, this came out in 2017. This is not that old. He was asked in an interview once, what are some of the themes you were planning on going for in this series? And he said, and I quote, oh no, nothing I write has themes or any deeper meanings whatsoever. Nope, I'm just a plot guy. I write an outline, come up with a plot, and write it. Nothing I write has deeper meanings. And then they're like, okay. In a completely different interview, he was asked, what are your goals with having written this? And he goes, I don't have any goals. I just write a plot.
I mean, at least he's honest.
Yeah, exactly. So, basically, the reason why Man-Thing is on my list is because this one specific portrayal of him, the one time Marvel tried to take Man-Thing and turn him into an interesting character, it's unfunny, poorly written, just everything about it. The art is actually pretty good. It's a waste of talented artists, but it's just so bad. And it's so weird. Like, Man-Thing already is weird. But then they turn him into a one-liner spouting action movie star trying to get his own movie made, despite the fact that a movie has been made about Man-Thing. Then he goes through other dimensions, ends up in a Man-Thing world. That's why he's on my list. That's why he's number 4. He's a D-list character, already weird. They took him in an even weirder direction. Thank you, R.L. Stine.
All that just sounds dumb, is the thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it was made by the guy who fucking wrote Goosebumps, so, like, no...
Well, there were some good Goosebumps stories. I mean, most of them were hot garbage, but occasionally it was a good series.
And you know what? I did watch, when I was a kid, I watched the Goosebumps show. You know what? No disrespect if you like those books. I'm just saying, they're not exactly The Great Gatsby. Not even the author says that, okay? So,
I love
chill out.
In The Great Gatsby, where at the end it reveals that Jay was actually a werewolf.
I know, right?
That's why he couldn't swim. Finally, we have answered the question of whether or not werewolves can swim.
I mean, the silver bullet George had didn't help, but you know.
It turns out it wasn't actually the green light that he was staring at. It was the moon!
Anyway, Casey, who's your number 4?
I'm going to give a content warning for the next section of this podcast.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about rape.
Yes.
Because we're talking about that awful comic that is Avengers number 200. So, like, skip ahead 5-10 minutes. I'm going to put the ad break after this. So that's a good place to start listening again, like during the ad break, if you just back up till you're in there. Just warning, this is dark. It's some horrible shit that we need to mock because of how bad it is. So, there's a Marvel Comics character named Immortus, who is kind of King the Conqueror, except not, sort of, because time travel, and also he's named Nathaniel Richards, which is the same name as Mr. Fantastic's father. And also, Immortus was once a superhero named Iron Lad, who was part of the Young Avengers, and also he was an Egyptian pharaoh who was responsible for the X-Men villain Apocalypse being evil. And okay, I've already gone super confused, which isn't great. Okay, so there's a Marvel Comics character named Immortus, who is a time traveler with a messy backstory, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He lives in limbo. Not the place between heaven and hell that it is in Catholicism. Marvel Comics limbo is just outside time. Immortus, who lives in limbo all alone outside of time, he got lonely. So he kidnapped a random woman, mind controlled her into loving him, raped her. Let's not split hairs. If you mind control someone into having sex with you, that's rape. He raped her, resulting in a son he named Marcus Immortus, who is my number 4. Immortus then sent Marcus's mother back to her normal time, and then Immortus died because Kang was killed, and he's Kang and time travel. So Marcus, all alone in limbo, outside of time. Marcus begins planning to escape limbo, and he accomplishes this by... How do I want to phrase this? To escape from limbo, he plucks Carol Danvers, then Miss Marvel, now Captain Marvel, out of time. He mind controls her into having sex with him. He knocks her up and sends her back to Earth with no memory. 2 days later, Captain Marvel gives birth to a baby version of Marcus Immortus, who overnight ages up to adulthood and has all of his memories, and the story ends with Carol and her new rapist son boyfriend running off to live happily ever after, and none of the Avengers have a problem with the whole mind control rape thing. That was the 200th issue of the Avengers. It's infamous for being just awful. What the fuck? Just what the fuck?
It's fucking disgusting. Honestly, like, who the fuck thought that that was even remotely a good idea to take Ms. Marvel, one of the most iconic feminist heroes in the Marvel Universe, one of the most popular female superheroes at the time, and having a story where she enjoys being raped by her son and all of her friends have no problem with it.
Yeah, what the fuck? And here's the thing about this fucking abortion of a story. I looked up who wrote it, and that just confused me more. It had 4 different writers, first of all, which means that there were 4 men who saw the script of this, and none of them stopped and said, hey, this is kind of fucked up, let's not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, all of the people who worked on this were accomplished writers. Jim Shooter, who wrote Secret Wars, George Perez, who did a bunch of stuff on X-Men, Bob Layton, founder of Valiant Comics, David Mickeline, who created Venom and War Machine. These were industry veterans with high pedigrees who made this weird story about Captain Marvel being raped by her son and giving birth to him. I don't know how this happened. Fortunately, Marcus eventually died and Carol was freed of mind control. She didn't come back to the Avengers, though. She was pissed at them because, yeah, she should be pissed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the very next issue after that was Marvel doing damage control.
No.
No?
It wasn't. It took a year for them to do damage control. Actually, you know what, now that I think about it, I think I know who to blame. One of the writers was the editor-in-chief, so I feel like if it was him, that explains why no one said anything. But yeah, it took a year for them to undo this.
Wow. I obviously have heard of this, and it's fucking terrible, disgusting. It's so fucked up. But one of the things I heard about it was, once Marvel started doing damage control, Carol went back to the Avengers and was like, what the fuck, guys? Fuck you, and left the team.
Yeah, she joined the X-Men after that, which, honestly, that doesn't track. She's now a mutant, but you know what? Better than the Avengers, I guess.
Yeah. Honestly, I would blame the editor-in-chief on that, because it's like, if 4 industry-established people were working on that, you understand how many hands that story had to pass through to get published to the world? So many people were like, sure, to it. That's one of the most fucked up parts about it. The other problem I have is, like, you and I are writers, Casey. I mean, you're, like, more an established writer than I am.
Well, you're like a film writer.
Yeah, I'm a screenwriter. You're a novelist.
I say as if that doesn't make me sound like a total douchebag.
Yeah. You and I understand the idea that we take certain story beats, certain directions with characters for serving a purpose. What the fuck does this serve? Like, what is the purpose of taking Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, feminist hero, one of the most popular female superheroes of the time, and making her a willing victim of sexual assault? Like, what the fuck?
It accomplishes, I'm guessing, one of the guys who worked on this was really into this sort of thing and just wrote it into his work. Keep it off the page, man. Please tell me you have a more lighthearted one to get us out of this rut.
Oh, yes, I do. My number 3, in addition to lighting the mood, is actually very funny, I think. In the Marvel Universe, there are many teams of heroes. The Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Power Pack. However, what has become, over the last 10 years, one of the most iconic superhero teams, the Avengers. What a lot of people may not know is that there are a couple offshoots of the Avengers. Because you see, the Avengers typically operate out of New York and represent the East Coast, right? However, there's also another offshoot of them called the West Coast Avengers, which was founded by Hawkeye and his wife Mockingbird and Rhodey, who at the time was Silver Centurion instead of being War Machine. I'm sure people might have heard of that. Less people probably know about is that there is an unofficial Avengers branch that operates throughout the Midwest. This team is, of course, the Great Lakes Avengers.
Woo! Fighting for Chicago!
Founded in my hometown in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but they operate all around the Midwest. This team was created by John Byrne and stars such incredible, iconic superheroes led by Mr. Immortal, who has the superpower of immortality. Now, you're probably wondering, what do you mean he's immortal? Is he invulnerable? Does he have a healing factor? No. Nope. He's just a regular guy. He bleeds, his bones break, he dies normally. However, when he dies, a couple hours later, he'll wake up. And that's how he's immortal. So essentially, the leader of the Great Lakes Avengers is Kenny McCormick from South Park.
Shit, you're right.
Also on the team is Dinosaur, a sexy alien humanoid dinosaur character, complete with bright pink skin, scales, giant beady eyes, sharp teeth, a triangular head, and wings. And to answer your next question, Casey, yes, Dinosaur and Mr. Immortal are in a sexual relationship.
Okey-doke.
Also on the team is Big Bertha, supermodel by day, crime fighter by night. Big Bertha has the ability to increase her body mass to become morbidly obese, gaining upwards of 2,000 pounds. With that comes super strength, durability, and all the crazy stuff that comes with that. Now, the interesting thing about her is her way of losing the weight once she increases her body mass. Is it like kind of like a power within her? She can like increase and decrease, kind of like Ant-Man, you know, where just he can do it at will? No, in order to go from big to skinny, she has to vomit up sometimes upwards of thousands of pounds worth of fat from her body.
Oh.
Also on the team is Flatman. He has elasticity, but his body is completely flat like a piece of paper. Other members include Doorman, who has the ability to lean his body up against a wall, create a temporal field for people to walk into the next room. So essentially, he turns himself into a portal. He's basically a door. He's Doorman. He turns himself into a door. Also on the team regularly is Squirrel Girl, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl.
Ooh, she's cool.
Yeah. So, just to clarify here, on the Great Lakes Avengers, you have Kenny from South Park, a furry, a morbidly obese bulimic woman, Flat Stanley, a squirrel, and a fucking door. Now there's one member of the team whom I left out. That member is my number 3. His name is Leather Boy. Leather Boy is a man wearing a leather BDSM outfit. That's it.
Wait, what? No powers?
Nope. No powers, just a regular guy wearing a leather Speedo vest. He is wearing a bright red ball gag. Nope, just in a BDSM outfit. That's it.
Do you think he was like walking home from a date when they were in a battle once and they just assumed he was part of the team because he had a mask on?
Well, how he got onto the team was Mr. Immortal realized he had powers and put an ad out in the paper to find, quote, men and women of action with special skills. And Leatherboy figured that this was going to be a part of a BDSM club. But nope, it's a team of superheroes. He's just a regular guy in a BDSM outfit that joined a superhero team. Well,
you gotta give a credit to him. He's still fighting with the team.
Oh, not for very long. Because, you see, alright, let me just start off by saying, this entire team is a joke. It's a complete satire of superheroes. Like, that's the point of all this. However, after a few missions, and it took him a couple missions to realize this, Leatherboy has no powers. So, they politely asked him to leave. Then sometime later, the team disbanded, and then sometime after that, they reformed. However, they did not ask Leatherboy to return to join the team. Outraged by his only friend's betrayal, Leatherboy dressed up in a Doctor Doom-themed leather BDSM outfit, complete with a Doctor Doom leather mask, broke into the Great Lakes Avengers headquarters, which admittedly isn't very hard because that was just Mr. Immortal's shitty apartment, killed Mr. Immortal,
big whoop,
and in cold blood, murdered Squirrel Girl's sidekick and best friend, Monkey Joe, who was just an innocent little squirrel.
Okay, that's too far.
But I will say, Casey, justice was served. Because Deadpool, of all people, tracked Leatherboy down, captured him, tied him to a tree in the middle of the woods, where he was savagely ripped apart and consumed by an army of squirrels.
Okay.
I feel like I don't really need to go too much further into that because I feel like his weirdness is pretty obvious. He was a part of the team, and he murdered members of the team after feeling betrayed. But he's just a guy wearing a ball gag and a leather Speedo.
Huh.
He's my number 3.
Well, my number 3... Oh, God, how do I even segue to my number 3? My number 3 was originally going to be Buonabis. You know, Buonabis, that white American dude who moved to Africa, then drank some mineral water that gave him super strength and beat up a gorilla and got a magic helmet that allows him to create weird chimeras, like fusing an ostrich and an alligator to create a dinosaur, or mixing rats and bees to create the worst pests ever, or turning Batman into a griffin, which is a thing he did once. Also, his name is Swahili for master, and he defends Africa, which might be the most hardcore example of the white savior trope I've ever heard, to the point where one of his creators quit working on him. I was originally gonna do that guy. And, you know, if I had done Buonabis, we have talked about how Grant Morrison's Animal Run fixed him by having him pass the mantle to a black guy fighting the South African apartheid, or how he was genuinely an enjoyable character in Batman the Brave and the Bold, which embraces stupidity and had him sacrifice his life to stop Starro. But then I realized, hey, if I'm going to talk about a racist DC Comics character, why the fuck am I going Buonabis? Because Black Bomber is so much worse in every single way.
Oh boy.
Sorry, Buonabis, off the list. I found something worse. So Black Bomber. By the way, he was a character created in the 60s.
Uh-huh.
Which explains a lot about him. You gotta keep that in mind. He was a white soldier fighting in Vietnam, and the military experimented on him to make his skin darker so he could blend in better in the jungle. Riley, do you see where I'm going with this?
I painfully, unfortunately do.
Well, guess what? It's so much worse.
Oh boy.
The experiment went wrong, and he gained the ability to turn into a black person when he was stressed out. Like Hulk, but blackface.
You see, I had the beef. A Hulk turns into a thing of beef. This guy becomes... I mean, I'm sure he was racist before, but this guy goes into blackface whenever he's agitated? What?
Yeah, and he, gets an afro.
What the... What? This is very much a product of the 60s.
It should be noted, this is before DC Comics introduced Black Lightning, so this would have been their first black superhero.
Oh my god.
Want me to make it worse? Black Bomber was a racist character, and when I say that, I mean that Black Bomber the person was a white supremacist.
Oh my.
Like,
God.
DC saw Black Panther and went, hey, let's make our first black superhero a Klan member in blackface. Like, what the fuck? The whole gag of the comic was that Black Bomber would accidentally save a black person's life and then get really mad because he was super racist. And DC wanted this to be their first black superhero with his own series. Thankfully, they decided the guy they wanted to write the series would be Tony Isabel. Like, they came up with the character, then they handed it to this guy to write the whole series, and Tony Isabel, A, he's black, but B, he's a good writer. He created Goliath and Misty Knight over at Marvel. And when he saw this, he convinced DC editors to not make Black Bomber their first black superhero. And they gave him permission to make Black Lightning, who is a much better character than this guy. Unfortunately,
Oh boy.
or maybe fortunately, I don't know. The thing is, Black Bomber still exists in DC Comics.
Oh my God.
During Dwayne McDuffie's run in the mid-2000s, he had an issue of Justice League where Vixen meets Black Bomber, who asks her if he can say the N-word.
Oh my God.
And she says, no, you cannot. Who thought this was a good idea? If they didn't give the series to Tony Isabel, would they have gone through with it? How did no one realize, holy shit, this is a horrible, horrible racist idea?
Why was he reintroduced all these years later?
As a joke, I assume.
Okay. I kind of don't even know what to say. That's just really fucking bad in every fucking possible sense of the word. Like, from every angle of it. That's just bad. Literally everything about it. It's offensive, it's racist, it's a stupid idea, it's fucked up from DC's part. I mean, saying, it was in the 60s, that obviously we're not excusing it in any way. I mean, thankfully, Black Lightning ended up being the first.
Yeah, thank God they didn't go with this.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, this idea was kind of reused by Marvel, because they had an arc where Punisher gets face surgery and it goes wrong and he becomes black.
Mm-hmm. Also, there was an issue of Superman, I believe it was in the 40s or 50s, where Lois Lane went into a machine.
Oh my God, I forgot. Oh shit, yeah, you're right. Oh boy, that was bad.
Yeah. Race bending in comics is just bad. Race bending in general is just bad. When an entire company is going to such great lengths to find a way to do it, it just gets so much worse.
You know, actually, now that I think about it, there is a very famous Marvel Comics character who had their race magically changed and it stuck, and, like, people forget that this character was white when they were introduced.
You know who's that?
Psylocke. Psylocke was a white lady when she was introduced, and then she got into a weird science experiment that made her Asian. There are so many things wrong with that. Riley, what's your number 2? I have a lot of downers in this, I just realized.
Well, luckily for you, the rest of mine are gonna bring you up. This character is not Marvel, not DC, not even Image. This character is from Dynamite Comics, featured in the Garth Ennis series, The Boys. And you knew Garth Ennis is going to be on a list of weird comic book characters.
I have a Garth Ennis character later on this list.
Yeah, you do. Point is, Garth Ennis, he does some weird shit. He hates superheroes, so honestly, a lot of it's just fucked up and weird. But whenever he tackles the topic of superheroes, like he does in The Boys, it's the most distasteful, darkly comical, just fucked up possible way. And let me just say, there's a lot of differences between the comics and the show. I'm kind of going to be blending both here. So, this is a universe in a comic and TV show where you have a serial killer Superman, a Nazi Shazam, a child-murdering Human Torch, a rapist Aquaman, a drug-addicted Flash, a drunk, sex-addict Wonder Woman, a white supremacist Martian Manhunter, and an equivalent to Mr. Fantastic that owns a chain of gay conversion camps, while he himself is a homosexual. That's the type of character we're talking about. Of all of them, I chose to go with a man by the name of Vasily Vereshchagin, who featured in The Boys number 11. He was a former police officer, soldier, tank operator, and superhero for the Soviet Union. After the Soviet Union fell, he retired his superhero life. He opened up a bar, managed it, and that's where we find him in the series. He's an acquaintance of Billy Butcher, the main guy who's leading a campaign against superheroes. He comes to Vasily, or Voss as they call him. They meet up with Voss to talk about these new superheroes that are being created until a sequence of events causes Voss to take up the mantle of his once glorious superhero alter ego and ally himself alongside the cause of Billy Butcher and the boys. Vasily Vereshchagин's superhero alter ego is named Love Sausage. Now, in the comics, Love Sausage's superpowers include super strength, durability, speed. Basically, he's a fat Russian Captain America, or how the upcoming Black Widow movie will be portraying the Red Guardian. That's basically what he is. He's a fat Russian Captain America. And that's the extent of his powers. However, I will not be referring to his character in the comics. I will be talking about his brief but very memorable cameo in the Amazon Prime The Boys television series, where they did a bit of changing of his character. He no longer, we don't know if he has the rest of his powers, but in the show, the showrunners changed his power to elasticity. Now you may be wondering, what's so weird about that? There's a lot of characters that have elasticity as their powers. Mr. Fantastic, Elastigirl, Plastic Man, Elongated Man. Hell, he's not even the only superhero with elasticity in the Boys universe. The reason why he's my number 2 is not so much his powers, more so the limitation of his powers. His elasticity is limited to only being able to use it on one part of his body.
Oh my god, just fucking say it, Riley. I'm on the edge of my seat because I know who this character is. Just say it.
In the show The Boys, Love Sausage can only use elasticity on his penis.
Oh.
So, I will say, they didn't just pull that out of nowhere. I know you're probably wondering, how the hell did they get that? What? How the hell did they go from Captain America to... Well, I'll tell you. You see, the joke with Love Sausage in the comic is that he is drawn with a very massive, and I'm talking impressively massive bulge in his pants. If you're... I don't know about you, Casey, but if you're looking at the same photo I am...
I am. Why did you bring me to this hell?
Because I wanted to let everybody know that his tip is almost touching his kneecap. That's impressive right there. So, point is, in the comics, he just has a massive dick. And in the show, they're like, alright, we're not going to use him as an actual character, so we'll just make a joke about his dick, which is essentially a big part of who he is in the comics. Just a big dick joke. And yeah, that's why he's my number 2.
So my number 2, blocking the last 5 minutes from my memory, my number 2. So, Warner Brothers, massive media conglomerate, actually kind of scary. We've been doing so much Warner Brothers stuff lately, it's terrifying how much they own. They're a good contender with Disney for the most terrifying media company. Anyway, Warner Brothers owns Detective Comics, and sometimes Warner Brothers has DC do weird crossovers with their properties. For instance, there was a Constantine story where he and Batman teamed up to fight a Dementor from Harry Potter. There were a series of weird, edgy Hanna-Barbera cartoon reboots. There was a Scooby-Doo Zombie Apocalypse. There was a Mad Max reboot of Wacky Races. And there was a Flintstones comic where Fred and Barney commit ethnic cleansing. Yes, there is a comic where Fred Flintstone says, and I quote, "We participated in a genocide, Barney." Yabba dabba doo, that's a thing that exists.
Oh boy.
But Riley, I know you love the Looney Tunes, so let's talk about how DC has used them in the past. In 2017, there were a bunch of crossovers between DC and the Looney Tunes. There was one where Wile E. Coyote hired Lobo to kill the Roadrunner. There was a surprisingly good crossover between Batman and Elmer Fudd. And there was one where Lex Luthor hires Porky Pig because Porky Pig is good at Bitcoin.
Okay. But of course he is.
But my favorite, DC Looney Tunes thing has to be the 5th issue of Grant Morrison's Animal Man. titled Coyote Gospel, where Animal Man meets Wile E. Coyote. And I mean, admittedly, he's called Crafty Coyote, but come on, it's Wile E. Coyote. So, Crafty Coyote got tired of being injured in his hunt for the Roadrunner, so he broke into heaven and confronted God about his hellish existence. And God made a deal with the coyote that he would live an eternity of suffering in hell alone, and in return God would spare the Looney Tunes world. Crafty Coyote lands in the DC universe, which I guess is hell for cartoon characters.
All right.
Which means all those other DC crossovers I talked about earlier, yeah, that's hell. Porky Pig is in hell.
Yeah.
And his hell is working for Lex Luthor.
Of course it is.
So, while he's in DC world, Crafty Coyote doesn't look like a cartoon character. He looks like a werewolf. And like he gets injured, he gets blown up by dynamite and hit by a car and crushed under boulders, but the injuries aren't played for laughs, they're gory and realistic. Like there's a panel where he gets hit by a car and then vultures eat his intestines. It's horrific. Crafty is eventually killed by a hunter and dies lying in the middle of a four-way intersection, his arms stretched out like he's been crucified. And God, who is implied to be a comic artist because this is Grant Morrison's Animal Run and it's that kind of thing. It's honestly best comic I've ever read, but it's a weird one. The comic ends with God closing off the story by saying, "That's all, folks," as Wile E. Coyote is crucified.
Okay. Wow. See, I have heard of a lot of crossover between DC Comics and the Looney Tunes. Like, for example, right now, I'm looking at the image of Wile E. Coyote confronting Lobo about killing the Roadrunner.
Yeah, but wouldn't you like Wile E. Coyote confronting God about his hellish existence? And God sending him to hell for disobeying him?
I mean, let's be honest. Wile E. Coyote's a fucking piece of shit. You know? Like, dude, at a point, you've been trying to hunt down this Roadrunner for, like, 80 years now. Get some different food, man.
I mean, he did try and kill Bugs Bunny once. It went even worse than his normal hunt.
I'm also looking at a crossover between Harley Quinn and Gossamer. Gossamer is the giant orange monster created by the witch.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was Catwoman adopts Sylvester and Tweety or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now as well. There was also another DC meets Looney Tunes where all of the Looney Tunes were in this realistic Western style world and they were all people and I don't know, it was just weird and gritty, but Wile E. Coyote in Animal Man gets hit by a car and savagely ripped apart by vultures, huh?
Yeah.
That is pretty weird. I'm not gonna lie.
But is it weirder than your weirdest?
I would say so. Yes. Just to the sheer bizarreness of how the fuck this happened. Us reviewing Howard the Duck last week got me thinking about a story I heard that I had forgotten for a while, but I think it's hilarious and was perfect for this list. Howard the Duck is not on my list. Just throwing that out there right now.
Not even when he gets transformed into a mouse with really big titties?
Unfortunately not. Who is on my list is another anthropomorphic duck owned by a completely different company. This character being Leonard the Duck, owned by Image Comics. Now, you look at Leonard the Duck. He is a shameless ripoff of Howard the Duck. Like, literally, beat for beat. Look, design, story, character, everything. He basically is Howard the Duck. So, yes, Howard the Duck is very weird, but he's just kind of like a second-rate Howard the Duck, right? Well, the reason why he's my number one is not so much his character, more so his origin. Allow me to tell you a story that begins in our real world. In the 1970s, a man by the name of Steve Gerber created the Marvel character Howard the Duck and wrote Howard the Duck for many years. However, at a point, he decided he was fed up with Marvel, fed up with the pay, and he quit. He broke his contract and he quit. However, he wanted to take Howard the Duck with him because that was his brainchild. Marvel, especially at the time, whatever creators create in the Marvel Universe, Marvel owns. I mean, now they have like Icon, which is more so creator-owned stuff, but if you make a character in the Marvel Universe, Marvel owns that character. If you leave or quit or get fired, you cannot take that character with you. that is Marvel's property now. So, Steve Gerber was unable to get the rights to Howard the Duck. And because of that, he went to go work with Eclipse Comics to create a new duck-themed character called Destroyer Duck. Destroyer Duck is basically Howard the Duck, but military-themed. And he wrote that character for many years. Then, at a point, many years later, Marvel approaches Steve Gerber for the purpose of him writing a new Howard the Duck story. They wanted to let bygones be bygones, let the past be the past. Marvel was planning a crossover event between Howard the Duck, Spider-Man, and the X-Men hero Gambit. And they wanted Steve Gerber, because he knew so much about Howard the Duck, to write that story. But Gerber refused. Then, pretty soon after that, and I mean around the same time, Eric Larson, the creator and writer of the Image Comics character Savage Dragon, approached him if he wanted to do a Destroyer Duck Savage Dragon crossover. And initially, Steve Gerber refused. But then he hatched an idea. Now, he went to Marvel and Eric Larson and said he'll do both of them under one condition. He does them at the exact same time, and at a point, both of the stories would interconnect with each other. So, at a point in these stories, it would be a Howard the Duck, Spider-Man, Gambit, Destroyer Duck, and Savage Dragon crossover. Marvel is printing their own version of the story, which was the Howard the Duck, Spider-Man, Gambit story, and Image Comics was printing the Savage Dragon, Destroyer Duck crossover. And at a point, they would cross over into each other's story. Steve Gerber starts collaborating and writing both of these stories. At a point in the climax, all the heroes have joined forces, and the villain of the story, who's named Elf with a Gun, he's an elf with a gun, that's it. He blasts Howard the Duck with a cloning machine and creates hundreds of clones of Howard the Duck. And it's this whole, oh my god, who's the real Howard the Duck? But then eventually the heroes find the real Howard the Duck, defeat all the clones, stop Elf with a Gun, and the day is saved. All the heroes part ways, Savage Dragon and Destroyer Duck go back to their universe, Howard the Duck, Spider-Man, Gambit, they go back onto their lives, and the day is saved. However, that's Marvel's definition of what happened. In the Image Comics story, the Savage Dragon and Destroyer Duck story, there's a couple extra panels. Those panels depict Destroyer Duck and Savage Dragon finding the real Howard the Duck, taking him back to the Image Comics universe back with them. And they even acknowledge the fact that the Howard the Duck that the Marvel characters found, that's not the real Howard the Duck. That's a clone. And then Destroyer Duck and Savage Dragon brought the real Howard the Duck to their universe, where he dyed his feathers and took on the new alias of Leonard the Duck. So, the reason why he's my number one is because not so much the fact that he is basically Howard the Duck. He's weird because he is the real Howard the Duck, stolen from the Marvel main continuity 616 universe, currently in witness protection in the Image Comics universe. He is the real Howard the Duck. That's what makes him weird.
I can't believe that worked. Did he continue to appear in Image Comics?
For a little bit. I know Destroyer Duck and Leonard the Duck, their storylines have ended some time ago. But I believe Savage Dragon... Is Savage Dragon still going on? I don't know. So essentially, the creator heisted his own intellectual property from one of the big companies in comic books at the time and got away with it.
I feel like the moment that Leonard the Duck appears in Image Comics, they will get sued.
Yeah, but they didn't.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, that's why he's my number one. Not because he himself is a weird character.
Although he is.
But that also establishes that in the 616 Marvel Universe, Howard the Duck has been fake for the last few decades.
Huh. So, we've reached the end of the list. There's only one left. So far, we've talked about the Beef, Phantoma, Man-Thing, Marcus Immortus, Leather Boy, Black Bomber, Love Sausage, Crafty Coyote, Leonard the Duck. Who could top this list? Well, shit, let's just top it with what topped the last one. Last time we did this, you broke me, Riley. You broke me by bringing up Dog Welder, a superhero who carries around a blowtorch and welds dogs to people's faces. Which is ridiculous and also doesn't make sense from a welding perspective. Oh, and by the way, in that you asked, where does he get the dogs? I looked it up. He kills them, Riley. He kills dogs so he can weld them to criminals' faces.
Of course he does. Thank you, Garth Ennis. Thank you.
Yeah. Although, actually, he was created by Steve Dillon, apparently. But he was written almost exclusively by Garth Ennis, so whatever. Now, can I be honest? We just mocked the concept of dog welder last time, which is a shame, because we could have gone so much further into it. Because everything about this character is a new level of fucking stupid, and I love it. Dog Welder is a member of Section 8, a group of loser superheroes who are supporting characters in Hitman by Garth Ennis and John McCree. Other members of Section 8 include Six Pack, an alcoholic idiot who gets into bar fights and misremembers them as him fighting supervillains. Bueno Excelente, a porn star who can only say the words bueno and excelente, and also apparently he raped Kyle Rayner, which is okay. Phlegm Jam, who has the ability to cough up a lot of phlegm. Friendly Fire, who has the powers you would expect from the name Friendly Fire. He shoots his teammates. They have a bad parody of Arnold Schwarzenegger and a French dude who beats people to death with a baguette. Truly, DC's greatest team of superheroes. After all of the team but Six Pack was killed by monsters from the Cthulhu mythos, yes, that's how they died, Six Pack had a conversation with the Phantom Stranger, who said that all of them went to limbo. Except Dog Welder. He went to hell because of course he did. I quote, he welded dogs to people for fuck's sake. That's a direct quote from the Phantom Stranger. Dog Welder is so weird that the Phantom Stranger said fuck. Now, it should be noted, the DC Universe version of Limbo isn't the Catholic mid-place. It isn't the time travel place from Marvel. Limbo is a place that showed up in Ambush Bug, Animal Man, and Final Crisis. It's where comic characters go when they're removed from continuity. All of Limbo is weird enough to get its own section on this list, but think about what that means. Dog Welder was so fucking evil that he escaped being erased from reality and instead got sent to hell. And you know what? Dog Welder's not actually my pick.
No?
This is just lead up to an even weirder character. The reason I'm talking about Dog Welder is because my number one is Dog Welder 2. That's right, Dog Welder got a legacy character. The second Dog Welder was an ordinary man who brought the original's gear from an antique store and got possessed by the old one. Then he welded the family's dog to his children's faces and joined up with the new version of Section 8. This new version of Dog Welder, like the original, can't talk, but John Constantine teaches him he can use dead dogs as puppets to communicate.
Alright.
So while the team is in Egypt, Dog Welder meets the spirit of the last Dog Welder and learns that his dog welding powers are actually a curse from Anubis, the dog-faced Egyptian god of the dead. How can this get weirder, Riley? Well, Dog Welder learns that Sirius A and Sirius B are expanding, and that it's gonna destroy the Earth. So he steals a spaceship, flies to these stars that, by the way, are 8.6 goddamn light years away. And Dog Welder summons the souls of all past Dog Welders, and uses their power to weld Sirius A and Sirius B back together. Because it's the dog star. He welds dogs. He welds two stars together to save the Earth. That's my number one. Dog Welder. The man who is so good at welding dogs to people's faces that he saved the world. So I salute you, sir.
How does he use dead dogs as puppets if he can't talk?
I don't know. Dog Welder magic. And that's the question you have? I said he moves stars and you're questioning how he uses ventriloquism?
Yes. I need to know this information, Casey. You know, like you said at the beginning of... Fuck. Like you said at the beginning of talking about Dog Welder, we only talked about the concept of Dog Welder in the last episode. I knew nothing about Dog Welder. Honestly, I thought he was just kind of like a one-off character. I never would have in a million years guessed the idea that he could weld stars together.
Yeah, honestly, I think if we're being technical, that makes him stronger than Superman.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, on par. Like, what's stronger, a supernova or moving a star? And you know what the best part of all this is?
What?
We have not scratched the surface on weird comic characters.
No.
There are weirder than this, I guarantee.
Oh, yeah. We can do this. Like, make this a regular thing if we want to. We could keep just amazing each other with whatever the fuck we come up with. Like, why the fuck did Dog Welder become a legacy character? Of all the characters that you could have chosen to continue, why do I have a Dog Welder 2 when I don't have a Firefly Season 2? Of all the things you could have done, why Dog Welder? Why Dog Welder the character?
I don't know.
I'm struggling to come up with ideas to say about this. You win. You win.
Yay!
Dog Welder 2 is weirder than Leonard the Duck, by far.
Riley, where can they find you?
You can find the show on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Silver Age Silver Screen. You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my short films. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, where you can check out all my content.
You can find me on Twitter at Jarmes Casey, JARMESCASEY. You can also find basically everything I've ever done at caseyjarmes.wordpress.com. Got a bunch of writings, bunch of games, few oddities there. I made a video essay when this comes out a few months back where I talked about superheroes a bunch. I mentioned Animal Man 3 times here, and I talked about why I love Animal Man in that video. It's called My Hero Academia, Superheroes in the Status Quo. Go watch it. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't eat so many hamburgers that we Hulk out.
Or buy Dog Welder's costume at an antique store and get possessed by an ancient Egyptian god to get enough power to weld fucking stars together.
Yeah, let's try and avoid that. Next episode, we're going to continue the theme of just weird shit. Because we're talking about the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which is somehow even weirder than the game.
Yep.
As always, I'm Casey Jarmes.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just comic books. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to a ladder.